Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live stream. The theme for the last couple of weeks, and will continue to be, what are clubs doing to reopen and getting them to share their experiences and getting them to take us on their journey, so that as more and more clubs begin to open, we can have confidence that what we're doing, other people have tried, or we can learn from other people. But today, and we're going to continue on that theme of learning from clubs, but today I'm really excited to introduce Ryan Holloway, National Partnerships Director. That's a fancy title, Ryan, from the Australian Sports Foundation. Welcome to the live stream today.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you having me. And, mate, don't get too caught up in titles. They don't mean much.
Particularly in sport.
They can change on a dime, that's for sure.
You know, the Australian Sports Foundation, I think, is one of the great secrets of community sport and one of the great secrets of community sport fundraising. I'll go out on a ledge here and say, in my humble opinion, every single club should be incorporating a donation strategy into their fundraising strategy. And so when we raise that, people kind of look at us very blankly, and then we talk about the Australian Sports Foundation, and again, quite blank stares. So do you want to just give us, in a couple of minutes, kind of snapshot, what is the Australian Sports Foundation, and how is it such an incredibly powerful opportunity for clubs to fundraise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think off the bat, that word fundraising, right, can sort of turn people off because, as we know, particularly the community sport, we're volunteer-run clubs here. We've got people that are balancing their own lives, their own families, and then their passion for their club or their sport. And then to add a big sort of hairy, audacious sort of word like fundraising on top of all that can be a bit scary at times. But I think that's where the Australian Sports Foundation, really, that's where we sort of play the role, is to try and help simplify that for clubs, and particularly for grassroots and community clubs. So I guess in terms of a snapshot who we are, I mean, as you said, we are probably one of the better kept secrets in the sports industry across the country, unfortunately. And, we're working to change that at the moment and really raise our awareness and our profile. But people might be surprised to know that we've been around for over 30 years. We were established back in 1986. But effectively, the Sports Foundation, we're Australia's leading not-for-profit fundraising organisation and charity for sport. So, as I say, over the last 30 years, we've helped distribute hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $400 million, to sporting clubs right across the country to help in the development of sport. We're of the belief that sport plays a vital role in communities, is really essential to the fabric and the culture of our country, of Australians. And it's, we're out there to try and help develop a really active and inclusive sporting nation and help strengthen local communities through sport. So that's who we are and what we do. And we do that via a couple of ways. First and foremost is our fundraising platform. As I said at the outset there, fundraising can be, daunting for community clubs. So what we try and do is work with community clubs to incorporate fundraising as a revenue stream for their club, outside of the traditional things like your raffles and your barbecues and your trivia nights and that sort of thing, but rather, focus it, make it a little bit more strategic, include donations at times of purchase, whether that's at registration times or, people buying their kit and different things like that. And the beauty of that is, through that platform and through our deductible gift recipient status, is that any donation, any contribution that a club can attract to them via our platform is then eligible for a tax deduction. So they can come through tax deductibly. And then the other way we do it is via our charitable arm, the Australian Sports Foundation Charitable Fund, where we go out there and advocate for sport and try and lobby to get more funding into sport through Philanthropic Australia. So through private trusts and ancillary funds, foundations, government monies where they're available, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and when we talk to clubs about the concept of a donation, and they don't really takes a while to get their mind around the fact that this is a genuine fundraising strategy for clubs, because we're used to donations for charities, the arts, but we've not really ever thought about it in the context of sporting clubs. And I was the CEO of Sports Foundation, Australian Sports Foundation, Patrick Walker. I've had the pleasure of being sitting on a panel with him last week in a conference, and I'm a numbers man. I love numbers. I'm a accountant by trade, and the one number that I've got this right. He said that in the charitable sector, Australians donate $11 billion a year to charitable donations of some description. Yet the total sponsorship market in Australia is 700 million. So 11 billion to 700 million. So it's not even a tenth of the time, and that includes all the big major corporate sponsorships. And I'm going, well, that's why. Then Patrick asked the question: why are all the clubs chasing part of this $700 million market, which is, they go into the local club and saying, can you sponsor us? And then there's the work of putting a sign on the fence. But the donation strategy, and in a lot of cases, people have just as strong or greater connection to the club than they do to the charities that they're donating. The donation strategy is of donation. It doesn't require any additional work or anything like that. And 700 million market, 11 billion, 10 times the size, and it seems a bit easier. And that really clicked with me. And I thought, wow, that's a big opportunity for clubs.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's an opportunity for sport too, mate. And it's one of those things where sport, we've never viewed ourselves as a charitable or philanthropic cause. And I think we've got to try and change that mindset. And that's really, as I say, our role at the Sports Foundation is to advocate for sport as a philanthropic cause. I mean, you see in other countries, particularly like the UK, where, amateur sport has more of a charitable philanthropic sort of feel to it. They have been good at attracting donations into that. I think that the number one thing is, and potentially it's maybe a little bit of a pride thing, but sports never been very good at the ask in terms of donations. We don't want to go cap in hand. Sports always gone out and, sponsorships and registration, memberships, those sorts of things have been the key drivers in terms of revenue for sport. But when you really break it down and what sport has the ability to do, like physical benefits and everything like that, all well and good, but particularly for local community sport, they're really the epicenter for where people come together to socialize. It's that connectedness to community, the mental health benefits that come along with sport. So, yeah, you're right. The arts sector, we think, is a really good measuring stick for sport and where we can go to. They pull down somewhere in the range of $250 to $300 million a year in charitable donations and gifts. If we compare that to what we've been able to raise, let's say last financial year through the Sports Foundation for sport, we got 45 million. Now that's a great number, but when we compare it to the arts sector, I think there's a long way for us to go. So from a Sports Foundation perspective, it's about really connecting with as many of the grassroots and community sports clubs as we can across the country, getting them thinking about fundraising and philanthropy, and really trying to make that as simple as possible for them, because the numbers are there. As you say, the numbers don't lie. That market is out there. Sport just needs to be able to tap into it, and that's where we try and work with the clubs to help them get something structured up so that they're attacking it in the right way.
Yeah, and just American college sports also pretty much funded by the whole alumni system, which again is charitable donations.
Absolutely, yeah, the boosters and everything over there. So it's
which we're not allowed to have, but
yeah, well, not allowed to have over here. But there are plenty of people out there with philanthropic hearts that have sport very close to their chest as well. So there are those people out there for sure.
And so I'll go back to my comment about why I believe there's two really key reasons why I believe that every club should be using the Australian Sports Foundation as part of their strategy. And Ryan, you alluded to this concept of fundraising, and it scares people a little bit, because there's a misunderstanding that about fundraising. There's a very big difference between raising funds and fundraising. And raising funds is just getting them the money you need to run your club. And typically what we do is we go back to the same well, which is the players and the sponsors, etc. And so what they hear if we say a new fundraising concept, say donations, is they just hear another tax. You're just going to ask for more money in another way. But one of the most brilliant things about the evolution of the Sports Foundation is it allows clubs to set up projects online, all the collections done. So yes, the individuals within the club may or may not donate and be part of the donation strategy, but for me, more importantly, the individuals within the club, rather than being the donors, can just as effectively be the marketers of the donation strategy. So taking the message, the need for those resources out to their audience. And so that means, because in pure fundraising, it's not fundraising if we're just going back to the people who benefit. So the idea of fundraising, reduce the cost to members and participants. If we're just putting another tax on them, it's not actually reducing the cost. But if they then get their friends, their work colleagues, their families, their network to give the money to the club, then that's really, really fantastic. And that, so the infrastructure and the simplicity of how clubs can use the platform is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's what we try and do. We try and simplify fundraising for clubs and make it easier. And you're right, like everything that clubs do is fundraising, right? So whether you're out there trying to seek sponsorship, or whether you're looking for kit suppliers, or you're looking at for increased registrations and participations and all that, at the ultimate goal for all that is the funding, right? To increase not only the number of people playing and participating in your sport, but also the funding available to your club in order to get things done. And you're right. Like, people look at fundraising and think, oh, well, then we've got to go and source the raffle prizes, or we've got to go and
more
put
work
on the trivia night, or it's more work for people. Whereas what we do is, and you mentioned it there, is it's about taking, rather than whacking levies on your participants and your people in your club, taking those guys on the journey as well, and sort of saying, look, this is what we need. This is the funding gap for your club. In order for us to prosper, to have this sport for you guys to keep going, we're going to need X amount of dollars. And then if they're on board and they believe in it, then they can advocate for it. And then through their networks, they can go out and look to attract donations. The beauty of doing it through the Australian Sports Foundation, again, I'll come back to, is the tax deductibility. Yeah. So rather than running a raffle, or you've got to sell a ticket, purchase something to get a chance to win something, this is, well, you're giving something to your club, or a community club that operates within your town, or whatever that may be. And the benefit is that at tax time, you get to claim that back, and you've contributed to community sport within your area. And what we try and encourage our fundraising partners to do is to then take those people on that journey. So let them know. So if there's a club out there that's raising money for new equipment to start the season, let them know how much is needed. Let them know when some milestones are reached, and then when the equipment arrives, get some pictures of the kids or the participants utilizing new equipment, and let the people know who've donated that's where their money's gone. And the beauty of our platform is that we capture all that on the back end, so people have got the details of the people that have donated to them, how much, when they did it, and all that sort of stuff, and they can use that data to then communicate those stories to them.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with running a campaign every single year. And the benefit of doing that is that people are creatures of habit. And so we just get ourselves into that habit of going, if I'm able to, then I'll give $20 or $30 or $50 to Little Johnny's Club every year. And then storytelling is really important. Keep telling the story through the year to those people that have donated. And then next year we then ask them, hey, we'd love to be back involved. And the project for this year is, a shelter
whatever
over
it is. Yeah. Storytelling, most important thing in fundraising. It's that case for support and why you're doing it. And look, we've got a lot of clubs that'll have like an overarching project. It might just be a development fund or something like that they've set up, and they'll utilize the monies that they generate from that to plug the gaps where necessary. So if they do need some irrigation on the facility, or they do need to upgrade the canteen, or they do need new equipment, new uniforms, whatever it may be, they can dip into it at that time. And then they'll also potentially have, a project-specific sort of campaign that they'll run for a period of time. So if it's a cricket club that needs a new roller to start the season, they might just set up a specific roller program, make that the focus. But then once that's done, they can shut that down and get back to a more generalized sort of fundraising project. And all of that can be done through the platform.
Yeah, beautiful. Now we'll continue to showcase clubs. We had the Logan City Lions Gridiron Football Club on a couple of weeks ago, showcasing their campaign, where it was quite really successful right at the start of the coronavirus shutdown. So when people think they would least be able to spend money, they were making money to help themselves get through. Now, Ryan, really importantly, the Sports Foundation's got many angles, as you say, and we'll cover them over time. But you're doing a survey at the moment to get real evidence from sports clubs. So do you want to just tell me the link, and I'll put that up on the screen, and then jump onto the website so people can see that. But give us background to the survey. Why are you collecting it? Who do you want to fill it in, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, sure, Steve. So the site's covid.sportsfoundation.org.au. And basically, as you say, it is a survey. What we're looking to do is measure or get a true measurement of the financial impact on grassroots and community sport from COVID-19. So we know that, the sports sector at large has been really impacted by the shutdown. We haven't been able to commence seasons. Some seasons were cut short. People partway through registration process, and that's been cut off. The most important thing, though, too, is when social distancing and restrictions are lifted, what does the new sports world look like for clubs? The different measurements and standards that might have to be adhered to in terms of hygiene and personal safety. Also, is there some trepidation around people actually wanting to return to sport, given the nature of this virus? Also, what's the preparedness for clubs to come back if we were to kick off sport in a few weeks' time? We're talking about pre-season training, the preparedness of grounds. Do we have our equipment? Is everything in order? So basically what we're trying to do through this survey, and it sort of came out of a pilot survey that we did a few weeks ago of around 400 to 500 clubs that we've got on our platform, to really sort of measure the impact. And we had an overwhelming response from those clubs. And basically the message was that whilst, there aren't any monies coming in from registrations or local business sponsorships and that sort of thing, there are still monies going out. So whether that's for the rental on storage units, fees to councils, et cetera, et cetera. So what we've tried to do is really broaden that scope a little bit, widen the net, get as many community sports clubs to fill this survey out as we possibly can. And as you can see there from on the screen, we've had an overwhelming sort of response. It's been just over a week now that the survey's been live, 2,500 respondents there. So what we're hoping to do is really collect as much data and information as we can from grassroots and community sports to then do what the Australian Sports Foundation does, and that's advocate for sport and go and lobby Philanthropic Australia and different sources of funding to be able to get it back into sport and get it back into sports clubs, so that when the time comes and the whistles are ready to be blown, that all of our grassroots and community sports clubs are in a just as good a position as they were before COVID-19, or an even better, stronger position going forward. Because, as I mentioned at the outset, sport's a lot more than going down to the playing fields on the weekend and kicking a footy around. It's about the social connectedness that these clubs bring to their communities. We often find that the people that are involved, the volunteers that help run the clubs, they never strap on the boots or the pads or swing a bat. They're the ones that do it because they love their local community, they love their sport, and they want to see that continue. And they're the ones down there opening up the canteens, ensuring that the grounds are ready, so that the kids and the mums and the dads and the weekend warriors like myself can go down there and enjoy their sport and play. So we're really encouraging as many clubs as we can, whether you're a partner of ours or not, whether you've heard about us or not, to jump onto that website, covid.sportsfoundation.org.au. fill out the survey, let us know what your club needs, so that then we can go and do our job, which is to secure some funding to get back into the sports sector.
And so then you'll most likely then, the logical extension of that, most likely make that available through the grants programs that you then run. Is that how?
Absolutely, yeah. That's the ultimate goal, mate. Is to get some funds in, and then get clubs to apply for funding through us, and get it back out into these community and grassroots clubs.
Yeah, and the wonderful thing about the survey is, 2,500 registrations. I just saw that 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago, and I just thought that was wonderful. And so we'd love everyone to click on the link. So the link is in the notes of this video. If you're receiving the Sports Community newsletter, it was in the newsletter that went out today, so Wednesday the 27th of the 5th, or just Google COVID Australian Sports Foundation, and that'll take you to it. So really, really important, because there's a lot of anecdotal and there's a lot of myths about community sport. And I think what this will do, Ryan, is give us all an evidence base to say, hey, this group really needs our help at the moment, and it would be the evidence base that you can take to the philanthropics and governments, etc.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest thing, mate, is that a lot of the airtime on the impact of COVID-19 on sport is spent at that top end of town. We hear on the daily, we've got the NRL competition starting back up. AFL's got a date now. We're hearing about the impacts that it's had on cricket, and no tennis, Australian Open, those sorts of things. But all of that stuff, none of that stuff happens unless community sport's strong, because that's where all those people come from. Is from that grassroots community sport level. So whilst we still have a role to play for some of our for some of those national sports and the top tier sports, really what we've got to do is advocate for community and grassroots sport, and make sure that there's funding in there so that those leagues actually have the feeders and the farms and the pathways strong right across this country, because we are, we pride ourselves on being a sporting nation, and we want to be a strong sporting nation. And really that's what we're trying to do is ensure that the financial stability of a strong sporting nation is there, and there at a grassroots and community level.
Ryan, fantastic. You've been extraordinarily generous with your time. I know that you're going to hobble off to with your ruptured Achilles to try and get your weekend Warriors career back on track. So thank you so much for being very generous with your time. I say this once or twice a week, but when there's a really important message, we'd love it if you can share it with your clubs, tag people in that are the most relevant at your club, so we can get the survey filled, share it to as many people as we can, so that we can get that bigger evidence base, get some money into community sport. And ultimately, what we're always trying to do is just make it easier for the sports club volunteers. So Ryan Holloway, thank you so much for being part of our sports community live stream today.
No, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Yeah, I've got to hobble off to the specialist. The perils of community sport just prior to COVID, putting a stop to everything. I did myself a bit of a nasty, trying to thinking I was probably 24 when I'm well past that at this stage. Playing basketball at my local club, but we'll see how the rehab goes. But mate, really appreciate you having me on, and the work that you guys do as sports community is fantastic. And mate, I think it's awesome to see the reach that you guys have had, and the information that you're able to share with the community sports clubs that you do deal with. So really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for having me on.
No worries, Ryan. We'll have you back on soon. Certainly at the end of the survey, we'd love to get you to come back and share what you've learned, and what journey that takes us on, and how we can all help on that way. So
yeah, for sure, mate. Absolutely, would love to. Thank you.
All right, and thanks for everyone that was watching today, and thank you always for being part of our sports community.